Oyster farmers say the New South Wales government's investment in company Australia's Oyster Coast amounts to picking winners and will threaten the livelihood of small family farms. And while some believe capital injection from government and super funds could transform the aquaculture sector, others warn that it is distorting the market. Josh Becker has more.
Australia's Oyster Coast was formed by a handful of South Coast growers with a focus on marketing. It now has ambitions to become the country's largest oyster company, and they've been given a leg up by the state government. Deputy Premier John Barilaro announced a $3.3 million equity investment in the company earlier this year, alongside a $6.7 million investment from First State Super. But Andy Baker from Pambula Rock Oysters says it's not clear why the state government has invested in one company over others.
Well, it appears, and I hope I'm wrong, but it appears to me that they've either given this money to their mates or they've decided to pick a winner. And from a Conservative government, that seems pretty unusual behaviour, and there's a lot of farmers out here that are pretty disappointed about it. I think it's fair enough for any business or company to apply for grants. I'm interested that the New South Wales government is prepared to look at supporting agriculture through superannuation fund. I like the sound of those things. I'm a little bit concerned about this particular one, given it's such a lot of cash money for a company to actually start up almost, in effect. So the AOC here, my understanding is they've been able to buy farms, which shores up their supply. They've been able to freight their own oysters, and I think they're going to process their own oysters. Each one of those sections is already existing in the industry, and no one else in the industry got access to that $3 million. So I had to go to the National Bank to get some money and still paying that mortgage. So it seems in this particular instance, I'm concerned that this is a bit of a free hit for AOC.
Give us a sense about why you think it's a free hit and how significant a step it is for a government to invest in a company this size in the industry.
I think there's probably 300 or 400 permit holders growing oysters in New South Wales. I'm not sure of the figures. I'm not a member of the AOC, who've only been around for 5 years under a few different headings. I think they might have 20 or 30 guys involved, so it's quite a small percentage of the entire farming industry. For them to get effectively $10 million of a $40 million industry, that's a 25% of the industry. The government's picked one particular company to give it to. I really can't find a precedent for that, and I know my other colleagues, other farmers up and down the coast, processors in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, and freighting companies are all outraged at the fact that it seems like the government here has picked a winner.
The company say that they'll be creating a lot of jobs in the region, up to 75 roles, 40 additional ones through this funding. For an industry, as you say, that's been crying out for capital, why do you think that wouldn't be a good thing for the South Coast?
Of course, that's like shooting Bambi. Always creating jobs sounds great. But I could cite an example of a local freight company down here on the South Coast who's put a driver off because he's lost freight that this AOC now is carting their own oysters. They might put a driver on at AOC. Well, this other mob's put a driver off, so 1 minus 1 is 0. So, look, if new jobs are created, that's great. If new oyster areas are opened up, that's great, but we'll wait and see. But I must say my eyebrows still haven't hit the ground yet, Josh.
Brandon Armstrong is one of the largest Sydney rock producers in New South Wales on the Camden River in the mid-north coast. He says this intervention by the state government will distort the market.
Look, first reaction was a total shock. Obviously, that's quite a lot of money to be handed out to any sort of company or organisation. I sort of thought, well, okay, that's good for them, but I thought, well, maybe it could have gone directly into the industry and maybe marketed in a different way that could have benefited all farmers up and down the New South Wales coast.
Caroline Henry is a Womboyne oyster farmer and chair of the New South Wales Farmers Oyster Committee. She says the decisions come out of left field.
What concerns me and a lot of farmers is that with one entity having so much money, it could spell the end of the small oyster farmer. We will not be able to compete with people that have roughly $10 million in their pocket, plus other money they've got from other sources. So when we go to buy spat, some spat producers might be able to say, well, I can get more money from somebody else who has the money. When we go to tender for oyster leases through DPI, which they put up on a regular basis, we will not be able to compete against a company or a business that has that amount of cash flow. So my initial concern is that I'm really concerned for the oyster industry as it is now, and that we will end up having one or two players that would dictate the industry, and I think that is a really sad indictment for this state.
Deputy Premier John Barilaro, the Department of Industry and Australia's Oyster Coast all declined to be interviewed. A spokesperson for Jobs New South Wales says the investment will create 40 full-time roles with AOC and 20 in supporting industries.
Prior to any funding, investments undergo an independent analysis to ensure they will provide broader community benefits, including sustainable job creation. The AOC investment is managed at arm's length by Rock Partners, and Jobs for New South Wales has no role in the day-to-day operations or management decisions of AOC. Jobs for New South Wales will seek to exit the investment once job creation targets have been achieved.
That's a statement by Jobs for New South Wales, read by one of our reporters, and that's ending the report put together by Josh Becker.